Hi folks, how's it going? It's been a week. So if you hadn't seen the news yet, there was a mass shooting in Canada. It was in a school in a small town in British Columbia called Tumbler Ridge. It's a town of about 2,400 people. So everybody knows everybody. So every single family who lost somebody that day or who had someone who was injured that day, everybody knows them. Small towns are like that. So I have a whole lot to say about some of the stuff that I've been seeing on the news, online, and that I've been hearing from people I work with. So I want to kind of start there. Day before yesterday, I guess. Okay, so the shooting took place on Tuesday, and it's just been a week at work, and I haven't been able to kind of put things together. So the other day at work, I was in the break room, and people started talking about what had happened. And there was one woman who kept saying derogatory things regarding the shooter. Now, the shooter has been identified as a young woman, 18 years old, called Jessie Van Roostelaar. She is transgender, or was transgender. And too many people are using that as a reason for what happened. It had very little to do or nothing to do with what happened, her gender identity. But this one woman in the break room kept referring to her as he. And I kept correcting her. No, she is a she. She has transitioned, had transitioned. Well, I saw pictures of him when he was little. And I was like, well, I'm trying to put words. I can't word. She started transitioning when she was 12. She is a she. So then she said, well, he, she. And I said, nope, just she. And it just kept going back and forth. And she just could not or would not acknowledge the person's gender identity. And then another man walked into the room and heard that we were talking about that. And he said, well, she was tranny. And I said, no, she was transgender. And then I started, cleaning up my stuff because it was the end of my break, cleaning up my stuff, putting my sweater on. And then he said something like, well, girls just don't do violent things. And I'm like, yeah, think Karla Homolka. And I left the room because my break was over, but I couldn't anymore and still keep my job. So I have no idea what went on in the room after that. I don't really care. They can say or whatever they want about me. They know that I'm an ally. They know that I'm bisexual. The people that I work immediately with, probably not everybody in the store, but I mean, and that doesn't even matter. But I am a auntie to a very, very, very cool transgender nephew. So it hurts when people use a person's gender identity as a reason for their psychosis, but it had nothing to do with it. Very likely had nothing to do with it whatsoever. We don't know what was going on in her mind when she took all of those guns and marched into the school and started shooting people. We have no idea. She didn't leave a manifesto like the shooters from Columbine, decades ago. She didn't have, a website, or she had some Reddit posts, she had some Facebook posts where she showed photos of her guns and photos of herself holding the guns. So I just wanted to For those people who don't know or don't understand Canadian gun laws, see, and outside of Canada, everybody figures, oh, Canadians don't have guns. That is a big, big fallacy. Canadians do have guns. Canadians are allowed to own guns, and even minors are allowed to have guns and shoot guns. So when Jessie was younger, she had a minor's what's it called? Minor's firearm license. Now, a minor's firearm license expires on their 18th birthday. So she had turned 18, so she no longer had a firearms license. A few years ago, RCMP had been called to the house, and apparently because of Jessie, she had many mental health difficulties, and so the RCMP had been called there a number of times, and at one point they confiscated all of the firearms that were in the home. Now, I don't think the guns themselves were registered to Jessie. I think as a minor, you can't have guns registered in your name. You can just have a license to be able to, actually it is to possess and use non-restricted. Yes, so she could own the guns and fire them. So I don't know if the guns in the house at the time were registered to her, or if they were registered to her mother or her stepdad. That has not been mentioned in any of the news that I've seen. So for gun laws in Canada, minors between the age of 12 and 17 can have a minor's firearm license, and that allows them to possess and use non-restricted rifles and shotguns. So not semi-automatic, not automatic, just hunting rifles and shotguns that are used for hunting and sport shooting. That's all that a minor is allowed to use. And they have to always be supervised by a licensed adult. They have to pass the same Canadian firearms safety course that adults have to pass before they can get their PAL license. Their what's the PAL? Possession and acquisition license. So yeah, and then so once you turn 18, you then have to apply for the possession and acquisitions license, or the PAL. I'm guessing that because of her mental health history and the history of the RCMP calls to her house, that she would not have been given she would not have been given that adult license. So once you get a PAL, the possession and acquisitions license, you have to go through the course, the safety course. You have to go, plus you also have to fill out an application, and on that application you have to put in if you have in the past 5 years been hospitalized for any mental health issues, have any behavioral history with mental health issues, if you have recently had a relationship breakdown or a job loss, and if you answer yes to any of those questions, it doesn't necessarily mean you're automatically disqualified from receiving a PAL. It just means they are going to have further investigation into that history. So I remember one of my ex-boyfriends that I lived with, he had an RPAL, a restricted PAL, and he had to fill out that whole application. It was many pages long, and then they also interviewed me because I lived in the household, so they want to also know if other people in the household where the guns are going to be, is anyone else in the house struggling with mental health issues, or does anyone in the house have an issue that possibly the applicant is not declaring on the application form. So if a PAL holder and a registered gun owner has anyone in the house who is then struggling with some mental health issues where the guns may become a danger to that person or to the other people in the household, the PAL owner or the licensed owner of the guns is then bound by their license to make sure that that person is safe and that other people are safe. So they can have those guns temporarily stored. Like, they can voluntarily have those guns temporarily stored at another licensed person's home or at a licensed whatchamacallit, business. So like a gun shop or the local shooting club or gun range, something like that, and store the guns. So then there's the red flag law. Guns can be removed by police if they are called to a home for any reason, like a domestic disturbance, or in the case of Jessie, when she was having some mental health issues and the RCMP was called to the home and they took all of the guns out of the house, whether they were owned at the time by Jessie or by one or both of her parents. We don't know yet. They haven't said that. But then after they took the guns away from the home, I think it was 2 years later, so I don't know what the timeline is from then until the shooting earlier this week, but the guns were given back to the family, to the licensed owner. Because Jessie is 18, I'm going to assume that the licensed owner was one of her parents. So we haven't heard anything about the stepfather, so I don't know what his role may be in her life, if he's still in the picture or not. Her biological father is a fuckwad that I have so many things to say about him, but I don't really want to give him the time of day. So I'm going to assume that the guns were registered to either her mother and or her stepdad. The licensed owner of the guns petitioned the RCMP to have the guns returned to the home, and then they did. They returned the guns to the home, and there is our first failure of, let's just say, the system. Those guns should not have been returned because Jessie was still having obvious issues. They were still being called to the house. She was still having problems. Those guns should not have been in the home at all. It just boggles my mind how those guns were given back to the family if they knew that Jessie was struggling. There was no, like I said, there was no manifesto or anything like that from Jessie. There was no, that we know of yet. The RCMP have said there is no known motive for what she did. Did she leave a letter somewhere and just nobody has found it yet? I don't know. Did she just have a psychotic break and did she just grab a couple of guns and run to the school and start shooting? I don't know. Nobody knows yet. So she shot and killed her mother and her stepbrother at home, and then she grabbed 2 other guns and went to the high school, which I guess was not far away, and shot and killed some more people there. There's a total of 8 people plus Jessie herself who died that day. There's a 39-year-old teacher named Shonda, 3 12-year-old girls, named Kylie, Zoe, and Tikaria, 1 13-year-old boy named Ezekiel, and 1 12-year-old boy named Abel. Mom was Jennifer and brother was Emmett. There are 2 other victims who are in hospital. One is a critically injured 12-year-old girl, and the other is a seriously injured 19-year-old 19-year-old woman who is a student at the school. 25 others were injured in the shooting. 4 guns were found, 2 of them at the high school and 2 at the home. 2 of the guns were registered and known to the local RCMP, and 2 of them were not registered and not known. So they were not in the list of the guns that had previously been confiscated from the family a couple of years ago. So this was Tuesday afternoon. The alarm went off. Within 2 minutes, the 2 on-duty RCMP officers, Tumbler Ridge has a contingent of 5 RCMP. 2 of them that are on duty at any given time, they got to the school within 2 minutes, and with shots still being fired in the school, and they were being shot at, they ran into the school. 2 of them. Now, I want you to compare that to the Uvalde school shooting in Texas, where there was how many trained officers outside the school for an hour, cowering after the shooting had stopped, and they didn't go in. 2 officers ran into the school with shots still being fired. They were being shot at, and they ran into the school. And as they ran into the school, as I understand it, they witnessed Jessie turn the gun on herself. That's how I understand it from one particular news clip that I heard. It may be that they heard a shot and then came around a corner and saw her. I don't know. Or they actually witnessed her doing that to herself. Shortly after the shooting stopped, within another 2 minutes, the 2 off-duty officers arrived at the school and ran into the school and started exiting the students that are remaining. The student population of Tumbler Ridge High School is like 140 kids. So it's a small town. Everybody knows somebody who is affected. So I just wanted to go over some numbers. A mass shooting is defined pretty much worldwide as 4 or more people being shot. Doesn't have to be killed, just 4 or more people being shot. That's the definition of a mass shooting. So this qualified as a mass shooting. More than 4 people were shot. In Canada, since 1902, we have had 145 mass shootings. Since 1902, just 145 mass shootings. In the USA, in 2025 alone, there was 408. The number of guns owned in Canada, registered guns, where did I put that down? As of 2025, there are over 2.4 million licensed firearm owners in Canada, with a total inventory of around 10 million firearms in circulation. 10 million firearms in Canada, and we have mass shootings of 145 since 1902. So it's not that we don't have guns. That's not why we don't have mass shootings here. There's something else here why we don't have mass shootings, because the guns are definitely here. Of those 10 million, about 1 million of them are restricted handguns. So currently, handguns are restricted, and there's a freeze, I guess you could say, since 2022 after kind of the last big mass shooting in 2020. So right now, even if you have an RPAL, you can't buy or transfer a handgun in Canada. So if you currently own a handgun and you want to get rid of it, you pretty much can't unless you take it to, I guess, an RCMP or your local police station and say, okay, I no longer want this gun, do something with it. But you can't sell it, you can't transfer it to somebody. So if you have a handgun and if you're a licensed handgun owner, you really can't do anything with it right now, just because there's a freeze on it, because they're still kind of working through gun laws. Like the last, it's not like the last mass shooting, but the last like big mass shooting was in April 2020, and 22 people were killed. It was a spree. It was a 2-day spree of a denturist, like a guy who makes dentures, just went bonkers and shot and killed a whole bunch of people over a few different towns, but it's generally called the Portapique shooting. 22 people. That was horrific. So like just the statistics alone between Canada and the United States, like there's 10 million guns registered. That's just the registered ones. Those are the legal ones. There's all kinds of illegal guns here in Canada. 58% of guns that are seized in violent crime, 58% are registered handguns, and the rest that are seized are unknown handguns. So they've been smuggled in either from the United States or elsewhere. There's a gun violence archive from the United States that tracks gun-related violence in the U.S. Between January 1st, 2013 and September 15, 2025, there were 5,748 mass shootings. 5,748 mass shootings between January 1st, 2013 and September 15, 2025. 5 of them, 5 of 5,748 were perpetrated by transgender shooters, which is less than 0.1%. Now, the mega idiots, both US and Canada side, have posted hateful shit online saying that, well, you know, most mass shootings are perpetrated by transgender people. You'll find that in the statistics. Well, no, you won't, because it's not there. Those statistics that Donald Trump and Donald Trump Jr. and Elon Musk, if they just want to, their enemy for whatever reason are transgender people. Elon Musk is just a horrible person. He has declared his daughter, who is transgender, he has declared that she is dead, refuses to acknowledge her. He's just a horrible person. And she's better off without him, honestly. It's hateful, the things that people are saying. It's not helpful. It's not the least bit helpful to the families of Tumbler Ridge who are affected by this. It's not helpful to transgender people anywhere to say things like, well, if you look at the statistics, all of mass shooters are transgender. Well, no, they're not. The statistics are just not there, and it's not true. And transgender people are no different than any other human being. They have varying degrees of mental health issues, just like every single other person on the planet. None of us are completely mentally stable, ever. Most mass shootings are perpetrated by white men. I'm pretty sure there's a statistics that will follow me up with that, and I'll look it up and I'll post it. All of my sources I will post down below in the description. I just wanted to put some facts out there, because there's so much bullshit. There's just so much bullshit. And I found this article that was written by Sharon Carr, SHARANKAUR. She is a communications expert and principal at Navigator Limited. I don't know what Navigator is. 18 years of experience in crisis management, media relations, and strategic communications. So she says this so much better and with no F-bombs. So, and this is basically what I'm feeling. Sirens have faded, but the searing emptiness left by the horrific shooting in Tumbler Ridge remains. We are left staring at the shattered remnants of lives cut short, neighbors, friends, family, whose only crime was to be present when violence abruptly took 9 innocent lives and wounded many others. This moment should be sacred. Reserved for mourning for the quiet, agonizing work of honoring the lost and supporting the survivors whose worlds have been irrevocably broken. Yet even as this small community struggles to find words for its grief, a more insidious narrative is taking hold across our screens. The conversation has been shamefully diverted. Instead of remembering the victims and the void they leave behind, too many have fixated on the gender identity of the perpetrator. This is not distraction, rather it is moral vandalism. While federal leaders stood in solidarity speaking to Canadians about the unbearable loss, others seized the moment to advance an anti-trans agenda rooted in how the shooter was identified. The entire nation could have shared a moment of sadness, but it was hijacked to further the agenda of a few. It is a profound failure of civic empathy that the immediate, visceral human response, shock, sorrow, solidarity, is being overwritten by ideological dissection of a perpetrator's private life. This fixation is not an earnest attempt for the root cause of violence, it is a weaponized culture war reflex. The rot in our public discourse was on full display when BC Conservative MLA Tara Armstrong invoked the tragedy to falsely claim an epidemic of transgender violence. It is a disgrace. Responsible leadership in a moment like this demands compassion and the pursuit of truth, not the amplification of fear and hate toward an already marginalized group. The true outrage in Tumbler Ridge should not focus on the shooter's gender identity. The real failure and the story that demands accountability is elsewhere. This tragedy followed a systemic failure. We now know the shooter had a history of mental health crises and that firearms previously belonging to them had been confiscated by authorities. Then, in a decision that defies common sense and undermines the purpose of confiscation, a family member successfully petitioned to have those same weapons returned. That is where the legitimate fury should be directed. Why did our mental health and legal systems fail to keep those guns out of dangerous hands? How did a judicial discretion override clear public safety concerns? Those are the questions that merit examination under a harsh, unforgiving light. To obsess over the shooter's identity, to elevate it above the names and faces of the 9 people lost, is to betray the very victims we claim to mourn. It reduces a human tragedy into a political prop in a culture war that has already corroded too much of our civic life. Trust, the fragile thread that binds community. Phrase when even emergency alerts are met with suspicion and partisan reflex. When ideology becomes the default lens through which we process reality, even the stark fact of a deadly attack becomes fodder for politicization. We as Canadians must demand better of ourselves and our public commentators. The focus must return decisively and unapologetically to the families bearing the unbearable loss and the survivors marked by trauma. The focus must rest on somber reflection about how we, as a society, can prevent senseless violence, whatever its source. Let us reserve our energy not for parsing the identity of a monster, but for grieving the beautiful, ordinary lives they extinguished, and for holding the system accountable for its colossal failure to keep those guns locked away. Let us mourn with dignity, and let us fiercely resist the urge to let the loudest, most cynical voices hijack this time of sorrow. The measure of our humanity in this dark hour will not be found in the arguments we amplify, but in the silence we protect for true, heartfelt grief. I'm also going to put below links to the Canadian Suicide Hotline, U.S. Suicide Hotline, Childhelp phone, and other places where you can go. If you are struggling, please get help. Please seek help, someone to talk to, friend, family member, or an anonymous phone call or text message, anything. Thanks for watching.